Shabbat Shalom. Tonight is Shabbat HaGadol, the great Sabbath preceding Passover. According to tradition, the 10th of Nisan in the year of the Exodus was on a Saturday. It was considered a great event, in fact, a miracle, that the Israelites could on that day select a lamb for sacrifice without being molested by their Egyptian masters, who at other times would have stoned them for such daring. Now, another possible reason for the name, Shabbat HaGadol, the big Shabbat, is that the Haftorah is from Malachi, and he speaks of the great day of God on which the Messiah will appear. A novel explanation for the name of Shabbat HaGadol is that the people used to return from the synagogue later than usual on this Sabbath because of the unusually long sermon that was customary on this day. I will not afflict you with that particular plague. So our opening song is B'tzeit Yisrael, which is part of Hallel, which we sing on Passover, and Cantor Bob has a few words to say about it.
And not very much to say. My thanks to those who participated in the choral ensemble for this evening. And we're going to present music from various periods. The B'tzeit Yisrael is composed by Lewandowski in the 19th century, high 19th century music. You may recognize the style. And we're going to go through various periods to end up with the current style, which was one written by our temple music scholar in residence by the name of Elliot Levine. I guess you got a new title. So we hope you find meaning in tonight's service, and I will sign off.
Beautiful. Susie Kopel is going to light our Shabbat candles and lead us in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahalik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Susie. And Cantor Bob is going to lead us in the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ava uvratzon hinchi lanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit כי יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. לחיים.
L'chaim. So this is a piece called The Last Plagues by Ruth Bryn. After a crater erupts, volcanic ash may blacken the sky and make the sunsets lurid for months. There are eclipses of the sun, the stinging darkness of dust storms, and the totality of blackout. All of these remind us of the Egyptian darkness, so thick it could be tasted and felt. Could the children of Israel, rebellious and frightened slaves, have lit their homes with the symbolic light of faith or good deeds? Perhaps they cherished a glimmering hope that they could achieve greatness on earth rather than in the pyramids of the dead. Perhaps they blew on the spark of their hope that Israel, the lowliest of peoples, might achieve freedom. In the thick darkness of the Egyptian night, they could not foresee how often the nations would shoulder them out into the shadow, how often their freedom would be reduced to a flicker, burning for a moment after the oil is gone. We pray you renew this miracle for us, that in the darkness of our age, in blackout and rejection, in fear and ignorance, you will cause a light to burn for us, a light of learning, a light of freedom, a light of faith, a light of good deeds. These are the lights we pray will burn together to make a bright blaze of hope for our world. And our Kabbalat Shabbat song is an original by Elliot Levine, and it's related to Passover.
This is actually a Sephardic song from Adrianople, passed down for generations by the women in the kitchen. All those songs about life cycle and Bible stories. I believe we have a slide with the words of this coming up, don't we? Just checking. Okay. Cuando de Egipto fueron salidos con ellos y con mujeres, con Shishim Ribo cantando, con Shishim Ribo cantando, detrás les corrió Paró, con un pendón colorado, donde mostrujiste Moshe morir sin sepultura, ya morir en despolvado, que vos habéis queridos, haced fila Dios. Yo paré por otra banda. Tanto fue sus oraciones que subió al el alto. Toma esta vara, Moshe. Toma esta vara en tu mano, parte la mar por dos quita a tu pueblo santo
מצרים סעיבה נוגando. Este nesquemos hizo el Dios, que molagas al cabo. Este nesquemos hizo el Dios, que molagas al cabo.
I guess it's original in that Elliot Levine selected it, since we do very few Sephardic songs here, and it's time to open up our repertoire. But we will have some actual original Elliot Levine songs this evening. So this week's Torah portion is tzav, which means command. And that is the root of the word mitzvah, which literally means commandment. God commands Moses. Commentators note that usually when God speaks to Moses, the word daber, say, or amor, speak, is used. So why here is the stronger command used? Well, our friend Rashi, who is the medieval French commentator, explains that the Torah uses the emphatic expression tzav to warn the priests to be especially careful in their service in the Mishkan, in the movable tabernacle. He teaches that the word tzav exhorts the priests to follow these instructions miyad u lidorot, to perform them immediately themselves, and then to command future generations to do the same. As Rabbi Elise Goldstein asks, why would the priest need this kind of admonition? And she goes on to explain that the priest's livelihood was based on receiving a portion of sacrifices that were brought to the temple. But the first offering that is discussed in our Torah portion, the olah, was wholly burnt with nothing left edible for the officiant. So in this case, the priest would have to have total enthusiasm for the service they were rendering, with a low expectation of reward or compensation. And so the Torah uses the word tzav as opposed to amor or daber to motivate the priests to do something they otherwise might not have wanted to do. And that's the classic definition of a commandment, an obligation that we perform even if we don't feel like it. Hatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה וילמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחייך בית ישראל בגולה בגולה ובזמן קריב וימרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח וידבר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירון בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
The Baruch Hu is the official call to worship.
Yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Die 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 Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
This is a piece by Alden Solovey called Each Day. To start this day with joy, to end this day with peace, to start this day with longing, to end this day released. Live each day with valor, with trust, with hope, with faith. Live each day with wonder, with kindness, awe, and grace. Hold fast to sacred moments. Hold fast to precious love. Hold fast to one another. Hold fast to God above. Hold courage through the hours and humor through the tears. Hold God above your sorrows. Hold God above your fears. To you I must surrender, O God of hidden spheres. You are source and shelter. To you I pledge my years. Yahavat Olam is a prayer about God's love for us, and out of love, God gives us Torah.
Ahavat olam et Yisrael, Amecha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta, otanu limadta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu, ufkumenu nasiach bechokecha, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יום ולילה, נגה יום ולילה. באהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. אוהב עמו
And we continue with the Shema. Carol Lee will lead us in the Ve'ahavta, as is her wont.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'chol nafshecha u'chol meodecha v'hayu hadbarim ha'ela asher Anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher Hotzeti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot Lachem Le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Thank you very much, Carol Lee.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I have a wonderful passage that I had in my files and I can't find the author. So if the author ever listens to this, I apologize. Please find me and let me know who you are. So this is what this author says. Long before we all worried that, God forbid, we might become immune to the trauma that fills our news, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel asked, should we not pray for the ability to be shocked at atrocities committed by humanity? For the capacity to be dismayed at our inability to be dismayed? He was writing about prayer in 1970, and he was so bold as to say that prayer is meaningless unless it is subversive, unless it seeks to overthrow and ruin the pyramids of callousness, hatred, opportunism, falsehoods. Prayer is meaningless unless it is subversive. Mi Chamocha, the song that we sang after we got through the Sea of Reeds on dry land, insists on a better future. Every day, every time we pray it, we see the weary and the wounded who, over the course of their lives, had every reason to just curl up and die. We see them choosing instead to put one foot in front of another, to keep at it, fighting off despair, in and of itself a subversive act, until they saw change. In another poem from another culture, a Persian poet describes another way to get across an imposing body of water. It's not so much miracles, but our shared efforts that will save us, though they may, of course, be one and the same. This is the poem. If you put your hands on this oar with me, they will never harm another, and they will come to find they hold everything that you want. If you put your soul against this oar with me, the power that made the universe will enter your sinew from a source not outside your limbs, but from a holy realm that lives in us. Here's to some more subversive efforts that we can do together. The Mi Chamocha.
As a Vorspeise for Passover, a pre-Passover service, we sing Mi Chamocha to the sound or the tune of Adir Hu. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele malechutecha Necha bokei Ze'eli Hanu ve'yameru Adonai Imloch. Thank you. Le'olam va'ed.
This is a commentary from the Bay Area Healing Center. This week's Torah portion, Sav, includes a description of how the Kohanim, the priests, were to keep a fire burning within the sanctuary courtyard for the sacrificial offerings. An extended meditation on the element of fire and our relation to it appears in the 14th century work called Sefer HaHinuch, in a commentary on the mitzvah of kindling the fire on the temple altar. In this medieval view, Aish, fire, is a force of nature that operates within us. Aish is a force, moreover, that requires blessing. Acknowledging and blessing this part of ourselves, this energy that comes to and flows through us, helps bring about greater shleimut, wholeness. The maintenance of a fire on the sanctuary altar parallels the maintenance of our own inner fire. This imagery allows each of us to contemplate, in what ways does the element of Aish burn within me? How do I feed, make room for, or rekindle that flame? How does it get nurtured in ways that are beyond my own efforts and intentions? Just as we keep the fire within us burning, we also keep the precious gift of Shabbat, the Shamru.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת.
And that was an Elliot Levine composition. Beautiful, thank you. And we'll continue
World
with,
premiere.
yeah, world premiere, wow. Aren't we lucky? And we continue with the tefillah.
I've already asked him to do a choral version of that. Hopefully you will do it, Elliot. Adonai Sifatai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Adonai Sifatai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'emotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Hawel HaGadol, HaGibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'konei hakol, V'zocher chasdei avot ve'imaot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם, אדוני מחי כל עטריו להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
And we continue praying silently for a moment.
Shalom Rav ad Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav ad Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Ki ata melech Adon lechol hashalom, v'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael. בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, עושה השלום.
And that was another original by Elliot Levine. Not a premiere, I don't think, right?
It's from 2000,
Oh my goodness. Okay.
the early period.
It's held its own for a long time. So we take a moment now to think of those in need of healing, whether of body, of mind, or of spirit. We think of congregants and friends and family of congregants, Jonathan Davidson, Jeff Hicks, Randy Rubin, Ben Henderson, Kara Gilman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Leslie Farris, Emily Pasquarelli, Julie Lapidus, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sickhat, Jerry Hirsch, Amanda Burr, Terry Ray Elmer, Dennis Boylan, Gary Droutman, Irene Sherman, Sandy Schneider. And if you'd like to add a name in the chat, please do so, or you can also unmute yourself. Ron Jones, Eleanor Rosen, and Louisa Burnt, Diana Anderson, Solomon Fishman, Elaine Burke, Art Ochoa, Jackson Griffin, Kim Ko, Raul Camacho, Olga Wick, Ruth and Sandra Landis, Julie Farron, Janice Parsley, Jess Landis, Sandy Stackler, Larry Gonzalez,
Valerie Lippo.
Jeff Hicks, who is on the list, I think. Yeah. Any others? Oh, Paul Verschuren. And please join us in the Misha Berach, the prayer for healing.
Rafa'enu Adonai v'nirafeh, Hoshienu v'nivasheyah.
You're muted, Rabbi.
Okay, of course I'm muted. Beautiful piece. Really, really beautiful, beautiful piece. In honor of Passover, I thought I'd talk a little bit about one of the items on our Seder plate, which is haroset. This is called haroset and the apple tree. So as you all know, haroset, which is in the Ashkenazic tradition, apples chopped up with raisins and nuts and wine and honey. What does it represent? Now, if you ask the rabbis in the Talmud, you're not going to get a straight answer because they never have one answer to anything, right? So the rabbis in the Talmud ask, what is the meaning of haroset? And there are two answers. The first is the one that we commonly know. It's supposed to remind us of the mortar that the Israelites used to build Pharaoh's monuments and pyramids. Actually, a few years ago, I was working in Africa doing some building myself and putting mortar between bricks. And I thought, oh, here I am doing just what the Israelites did. But the second answer is a bit mysterious. They say it's in memory of the apple tree. Well, which apple tree? Well, once again, to help us figure this out, we have our friend, the French medieval commentator Rashi. So Rashi cites a verse from Song of Songs, which is a beautiful prayer, poem, song in the Bible. And he quotes this verse, "Under the apple tree, I roused you." Now, the full context in the Song of Songs is, who is this coming up from the desert, leaning upon her beloved? Under the apple tree, I roused you. It was there your mother conceived you. There, she who bore you conceived you. How does that explain anything about haroset? Well, the rabbis take these series of verses and do a midrash, and they place this whole scene in Egypt during the time of the Israelite enslavement. One rabbi explains that it was the righteous women who came up from the desert. As the men toiled under the sun in the desert, they stayed away from the women for fear that if they conceived a child, the child would be killed by Pharaoh and his henchmen. But the women thought this would mean the end of the Jewish people. So they would go out to the fields and bring the men food and drink and seduce them under the apple trees. How do they accomplish this seduction? Back to Rashi. Rashi notes that the women had mirrors in their possession, and they would use those mirrors to put on jewelry. Eventually, they donated those mirrors, and that was what was used to construct the tabernacle, among other items. Well, Moses didn't even want these mirrors. He was disgusted, and he said the mirrors were made for the evil inclination, like being too egotistic and worrying too much about how you look. But God said to Moses, "Accept the mirrors, for they are more precious to me than anything else, since with the mirrors, the women brought many hosts of children into being." So when their husbands were oppressed with slave labor, the women would go bring them food and drink, and they would bring the mirrors with them. And each one of the women would look at herself in the mirror with her husband and entice him with words, saying, "I am more beautiful than you." And from this, they would make their husbands desirous and have sex. And the women became pregnant in the fields. As it says, "Under the apple tree, I roused you." The laver in the tabernacle was eventually made from these mirrors because its purpose was to bring peace between husband and wife in the ceremony of the accused adulteress. Now the Midrash continues. When the women gave birth, heavenly creatures descended to make sure that the babies could breathe and that they were healthy. The women would then hide the babies in the ground and plow them over so they weren't discovered. The earth nursed and nurtured the babies so that they grew until they burst through the ground and came marching back to their families. Thus, the allusion to the apple tree and the connection to haroset, which is made of apples. Rabbi Dr. Aryeh Cohen points out that this interpretation introduces two things to the Seder plate, which are vitally important. First is the notion of resistance. The Israelites were not mere passive victims until Moses, with the help of God, came and redeemed them, there were ways in which the Israelites resisted, and this was one. And secondly, it was the women who refused to allow Pharaoh to deprive them and the Israelite men of both sexual pleasure and children. As Rabbi Avira says, it was by the merit of these righteous women who seduced their husbands that Israel was redeemed. So when we eat the haroset, we are called to remember the following. Oppressed and even enslaved people are not passive. They are active agents in their own liberation, and we should follow their lead. Resistance can be joyous, and we should exult in moments of pleasure. Finally, women have always been central to movements of resistance and liberation. And now we have a Passover song that is a Sephardic song from Turkey that was arranged by Elliot Levine and sung by our choir.
Paro, 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 paro,
Paro era straniero, salió una noche al sereno.
vino una estrella divina, tenía que nacer Moshe. Que no reciban ayuda. Las comadres eran judías,
Del yo eran queridas.
para Siria iban, pero nació Moshe.
I want to thank all our wonderful musicians and singers this evening. Katie Lippo, Amy Litt, Barbara Sorotnik, Rena Maduro, Lisa Johnson, Morris Maduro, Elliot Levine, Cantor Bob, Jim and Marilyn Orens, and of course, Cantor Bob and Elliot Levine for joining forces this evening and doing a special Passover Shabbat. And of course, I also want to thank Morris and Jory Yarmoff, who edit sound and video and play music and sing and run all the tech for me tonight, which makes my life so much more pleasant. So thank you everyone for your wonderful participation and beautiful songs this evening. Please remember that we have a community Seder on Sunday, and I'm hoping that many of you will come. That's my major announcement for today. Who would like to share either an announcement or a happy occasion in their lives that they would like to share with the rest of us? Don't tell me we have a sad group. Yes.
Mute your thing. I want to wish my mother happy birthday, 90 years old.
90, wow. Happy birthday.
You hear that?
Who else?
Right.
would like-
Ah.
Judith,
And I got my second shot today.
you got your shot?
Second one.
Oh, excellent. Mazel tov.
Okay, now me.
Yes, Judy.
My whole family has had their 2 vaccines, so April 7th, we're going up to the Bay Area and I'll finally be able to see my kids and grandkids.
Wonderful, wonderful. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Anyone else? So the major thing, as I said, is our community Seder, which is on Sunday at 6, and it's preceded by a meditation session from 4 to 5:30, led by Howard Rubin. And he's going to do a meditation on Passover and on the counting of the Omer, which we do starting on the second day of Passover, leading up to Shavuot. He's also been doing a number of meditation sessions on Sunday afternoon at 4. He's going to continue that beyond this Sunday. This was going to be the last one, but he's going to continue. So if people are interested in meditation, that's a good place to go. On April 8th, we have a Yom HaShoah special presentation and service. So we have Alison Owings, who wrote a book called Frauen about German women during the war, World War II, and what they were thinking and doing during that time. That'll be at 6, followed by a service, which Cantor Bob will join me in leading. And then over the weekend, we are going to show the film Resistance. Now, in order to see it, you have to RSVP in order to get a special password. I don't know why the distribution company is doing it this way, but that's just what we have to do. In the past, they've given us a password and you can just go and do it on your own, but you have to RSVP to the office so that you can get the password. And I believe all the information for how to do that was in the weekly email. It'll be sent out again next week. And anybody who gets adult ed also would have received that information. So the film that we're showing is called Resistance. And it's about the mime, the French mime, Marcel Marceau, who actually saved thousands of children. I mean, not single-handedly, but he helped save thousands of children during World War II. And so that'll be over the weekend of the 10th through the 12th. Of course, we continue with Torah study, which is now called Tanakh study, because we finished the Torah. It took us 9 years, but we finally finished it. And we're now moving into the second section of the Tanakh, which is Nevi'im, which is the prophets. And then things are going to slow down a little bit over the summer as we get ready for the high holidays, which are really early this year. They begin September 6th. Yikes. Okay, any other final? Is Katie actually here? No, I don't see her. Okay, no, I don't want to blow her cover, but I thought maybe I saw her. All right, so we are going to continue with the Aleinu.
Aleinu.
Aleinu. Aleinu.
Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומשה וגבו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד, אין עוד.
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We take a moment now to think of those who are no longer with us. May their memories be for a blessing. And we mention the the fact that 8 people were killed in Atlanta, 6 of which were Asian Americans. And we offer our condolences to the families of Kathy Rose Baratan, David Cronenfeld's sister, Jean Maines, longtime member, and Robert Doctor. Is anybody in the first 30 days or the first year would like to mention a name? And you can do it in the chat or unmute yourself.
Sanford Victor, what first year?
Werner
Bonnie Giller.
Kashi Gillette.
Albert Archibek Jr., Helen Iniguez, and John Alfervik. Fred Siegel, Susan Jones, Joseph Hantman, Brenda Oppenheim, Rabbi Bennett Herman, Adele Lucas, Mary Ellen Storia, Janine Lester, Dr. Bob Levy, Dina Eliason, Julie Eliason, Julia Poveda, Adele Lucas, and we observed the art sites for Effie Gordon, Joanne Barnett, Harold Lester, Lewis Miller, Marvin Margolis, Gary Ferris, Susie Siegel, Simon Miller, John Usack, Junie Berlin, Ryan Caldwell, Bertram Ekman, Sylvia Shapiro, Norma Glick, Danny Laus-Taunow, Louis Ziegler, Della Finkel, Edwin Herbert Clapham, Mary Brownstein, Esther Lerner, Nachamu Levy, Hyman Cohen, Paul Carone, and the 10 people killed in Colorado as well. Yes, thank you. And are there other yard sites that are being observed this Shabbat?
Don't need to add it. Don't worry about it.
Tyler Bronstein.
Tyler, mhm.
Murray Sturmer,
Bert Ekman was mentioned, right?
and of course, we think of those who perished in the Holocaust and don't have anyone to say the Mourner's Kaddish for them. And feel free to unmute yourselves for the Mourner's Kaddish and join me. Yikadal Hadash
Rabah,
Ve'almad Yifrach
Yifrach,
V'Yameh Yamlichon V'Yachon V'Yomechon Hayedechol Beit Yisrael V'Agala V'Zman
Amen.
Yishnei Rama Mevarach Olam
Maya,
Barach Barach Ar Ramam
Aseh,
Adar
Yitalel,
Yitalel Le'ela
Leila
Mincha
Mincha
V'Charta
V'Charta
V'Charta Tushbachata Nechemata Da'ami Ran Ha'im Aleinu
Say shalom,
Shalom
Ya Aseh
Aseh
Shalom
Shalom
Aleinu
Leinu V'Yako Yisrael.
Amen.
It's a source of peace and peace to all who are comfort to all of those who are in mourning, as we say. Amen. I'm going to ask you to please mute yourselves again. And Cantor Bob would like to say a few words about our closing song.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the choral music, those of you who did, and those of you who attended for services tonight. Thank you very much. The final song, or final hymn, is a variation of Dayenu. It would have been enough. Now, other than our composer in residence, Elliot Levine, whom I thank for joining me, for his first Dayenu part, his first solo, there's the Ilu Hotzi Hotzianu and Ilu Natan Natan Lanu at the Torah part. That solo is going to be done, if you remember Jerry and Nancy Sturmer. That was done in 1967 on a record called Beth Emet Favorites, the temple I grew up in. And the person who did the solo then in 1967 is also the person who's going to do the solo this evening in the same part. Now, if you do your math correctly, that's a heck of a lot of years ago. I don't look that old, or do I? Maybe I do, maybe I don't.
He does.
Okay, so
You had more hair.
Yes, notice the lack of hair right there. So, without further ado, this is a fun Diana written by my mentor, or arranged by my mentor. And it's a kind of a fun song. Hope you enjoy it, and hopefully we may even play it on our second night Seder. Thank you, Jory and Morris.
Tai Dayenu, Tai Dayenu, Tai Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu,
Die, die,
Dayenu,
die, die,
Dayenu,
die,
Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
Ilu Hotzianu, Hotzianu mi Mitzrayim,
Hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
Ilu Natananu et Torah,
Natananu et Torah, Dayenu,
Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu,
Dayenu, Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu,
Dayenu, Dayenu,
Wonderful. We'll get a chance to hear it again on Sunday. Hamotzi, our last bit of bread before tomorrow.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
So Eileen said that Dayenu made her smile. Wow, that's really high praise. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If anybody would like to stay and chat, please feel free to do so. If you have to go clean up your chametz, I understand. And Chag Sameach to everybody for Passover, and Shabbat Shalom.